Chris Carter here on the North Shore Drive podcast. It's Friday before Steelers-Ravens on Sunday. We're going to talk about that rivalry and why it could be in a completely new phase with the quarterback situation of both teams. We do that with Brian Batko. We also give our pick six on the games this weekend and our final predictions for Steelers-Ravens, all here on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined today by Brian Batko, one of our great Steelers beat writers. And as always, you can find all of our work written at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. Subscribe today for all our work there. You can also find this show and all of our Post-Gazette shows, but especially this show, the North Shore Drive podcast, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on this YouTube channel and on your favorite all your favorite podcasting apps, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh Sports Post-Gazette sports writers, including Brian Batko's Chipped Ham and Football on Tuesday. And as always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Whether you're injured in a car accident or hurt on the job, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims for over 40 years recover more than $2 billion on their behalf. If you or a loved one have been seriously injured in an accident, call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. Remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, that tagline there, never a fee, that has been classic in Pittsburgh since you and I were kids.
They also had one click that quick.
Yeah,
back in the day, remember that?
That was an old school one. Just like this has been an old school rivalry for Steelers Ravens for quite some time. But this year, this could be very different. Even in recent years where the Steelers offense has been bad, but the Ravens offense has been good, these games have been rock fights. These have come down to close occasions, big plays here and there, but the defenses deciding the tone of the day. And then you go back to the yesteryears of the late 2000s, the mid 2000s, the early, all the 2000s really, and then parts of the 2010s when these were close scoring defensive affairs that often decided these games. But now Lamar Jackson's on the verge of maybe getting his third MVP season of his career. Russell Wilson has revamped the Steelers. They've averaged 30 points per game in his first three starts. Is this a different day for the Steelers-Ravens rivalry, or do you think this game still comes down to defense, physicality, and it's going to be a game where you'll be lucky to see 30 points scored overall?
I kind of lean toward the latter, honestly. I mean, I don't know why. It's just a vibe, and I'll get into more of that with the prediction in the third segment of the show, so be sure to stick around for that. But, you know, you're right, Chris. I mean, a lot of the recent matchups between these two, Lamar Jackson's been on the sideline in street clothes instead of playing. Mm-hmm. When you start guys like Tyler Huntley or late stage Bob Griffin III, you kind of have to muck it up if you're John Harbaugh and the Ravens. You're not going to really be able to be prolific with those sort of replacement level quarterbacks. And that's been a major reason why some of these recent games have devolved into the slugfest that they've been. And for all of, for all the clutch plays that he did make in his two seasons here against the Ravens, Kenny Pickett was never really operating at a level that he was going to light it up, and may never do that in his NFL career. So yeah, both sides kind of had to lean into that, slobber knocker run first identity, and that's why there's a lot of intrigue with the game this year, because Lamar's playing as well as he ever has, which is saying something for a two-time MVP. Russell Wilson is playing as well as any Steelers quarterback since Ben. What was the stat that I think our buddy Josh Roundtree put out there, that he needs 2 more touchdown passes and he will have as many in a season as any Steelers quarterback since Ben retired, and he's played 3 games. It's crazy, but it's also not that crazy when you think back to the ups and downs that the Steelers have had at the quarterback position, to put it lightly, these last couple years. So yeah, it's going to be really fun. And as much as the on paper analysis tells me get your popcorn ready for a shootout, the gut feeling that I have going into this one, maybe it's just because it's dreary and gray outside my window today in Pittsburgh, PA, but that just makes me feel like it's going to be hard hitting, physical, some jumpiness, some nerves maybe too, could factor into the offensive side of the ball. So that's how I view it. I could see it going either way, but I just feel like when these two teams meet, especially this year at 7-2 and 7-3, it's going to be like two heavyweights feeling each other out for a round or two before the haymakers start coming.
Hey, we certainly saw that last night on Thursday Night Football when the Commanders took on the Eagles, two other really good teams, and that came down to defense until late when the Eagles' running game really took over the game. But I agree with you in the sense that I think both of these defenses could show up in this game. One, these two teams study each other better. They know each other better. Granted, I'd say if there's a newness factor here, the Steelers have the advantage there with Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith, and the way that it's opened up the passing game that we haven't seen from the Steelers in quite some time. And I think that could lead to something there. But like you said, I think these two teams, the one thing I think that people underestimate or don't talk enough about is how well coached both these teams are as far as their head coach on down. John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, they prepare their teams. Rarely do you see either team too far out of it in the season. We know Mike Tomlin doesn't have a losing record. We know John Harbaugh has some, but for the large part of his career, the Ravens have been on top of the division or if they're not number one, they're number two. And that's where the Steelers, have been for most of Mike Tomlin's time is in that same era. And now here they are at that again. I think part of it is because in general, these teams are prepared for what other teams try to do, especially teams they're familiar with. And I think that's why oftentimes these two teams, they come down to, within a touchdown of each other more times than not. And why you see their defenses look prepared, particularly against these opponents here.
And I think a big, X factor that gets a little bit overlooked when we talk about all the studs on each side of the ball, Lamar, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, TJ Watt, Russell Wilson, George Pickens, Najee Harris, Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, on and on and on. I do feel like there's a decent chance it comes down to one of the kickers. And these are two of the best kickers in the league. We might be seeing, it's hard to fathom, never thought we'd see the day, but we might be seeing Chris Boswell pass up Justin Tucker in the overall hierarchy of NFL kickers right now. You can't argue with the stats this year. I mean, Boswell's missed one from, 62 yards
62
in that Chargers game? Tucker's missed 4 field goals and 1 extra point already, if I'm not mistaken. So you've always felt good on either side with who you have, and that's the case again as well. But, if there's somebody who's going to misfire in the swirling winds at Acrisure Stadium, I feel like maybe for once it's Justin Tucker and not Boswell.
I mean, we've seen that come to play a big role in the game. The Ravens, the last time they beat the Steelers, I think it took 2, maybe 3 Boswell misses, including a block from Calais Campbell, that to lead to that loss. Granted, there was also Mitch Trubisky starting as well. But that's what we talk about, right? Is that these two teams have often dealt with injuries against each other. They both had to navigate through those waters. I think even in that game, Lamar Jackson didn't play in that game, and so. In fact, the last time that Lamar Jackson played against the Steelers was it 2020? It was rookie Joey Porter's first game last year. But you've done that. You did what in maybe 2 other games before you go back to the 2019 season when he last beat the Steelers. Right. That's why I think this game could be crazier is if Lamar Jackson comes out and he's on his game and the Ravens defense, which could be missing Kyle Hamilton, isn't on their game. Maybe the Steelers offense gets going, maybe the Ravens offense gets going, and then this becomes more about who can score last than it is about which defense is creating more turnovers. But like we said, with these two teams, you just never know when those sides are going to show up.
Yeah, Cam Hayward said Thursday that it always seems to just be who has the ball last, and normally you say that about a high-scoring matchup. For these two teams, it's more about just, all right, who has kind of survived until the end, the attrition that takes place in any one of these games. And it's kind of funny to me, Chris, you're right. I mean, we've been talking all week, us and others, about how Lamar always seems to miss these games by and large. You're right. He played last year, and it's not that he played poorly, but remember, he had Nelson Aguilar dropping passes, guys left and right, just the ball squirting through their hands, uncharacteristic for any NFL team, let alone the Ravens. So there's a little more nuance to his loss against the Steelers last year than meets the eye. But TJ Watt, I don't think, has missed a Ravens game yet. Now, he got hurt at the end of last season's regular season finale. He bangs up his knee with Montravius Adams and then has to miss the Bills playoff game. But he's always been on the field. He rarely leaves the field. I was looking at his snap counts last night. He's always in the high 80s to mid 90%, which is, I think, a little more than his career average. So he always wants to be out there. He racks up the sacks. He's got 14 career sacks or 16 career sacks, I think, against the Ravens in just 14 career games. So he has dominated this matchup. But again, it comes back to most of the time he's getting after people who are not number 8 wearing purple. So that's what's going to make this one of the best in a while, I think. And well, I mean, you never know what's going to happen in a game, but the lead up to this, I think, is the best we've had in a while for Steelers Ravens.
It certainly is. Both teams atop the division right now. Winner gets the temporary hold on it as these two teams duke it out the rest of the way. We'll get back to this game, but we also got to do our pick 6 here, looking over the other 6 big games from this weekend. There's a lot of big games to cover. We'll discuss those in a minute here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. If you're injured in an accident and you're probably wondering what's next, well, for over 40 years, Edgar Snyder Associates have helped injury victims answer that very what's next question. Whether it's gathering evidence, collecting medical records, or dealing with insurance companies, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped over 75,000 people handle what's next. Call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko, and as always, when we get to the second segment on Friday, we get to our pick 6, where we look at 6 NFL games that do not involve the Steelers directly. So let's start with a Sunday 1:00-er. This one, not one that everyone's tripping themselves over, but I feel like Steelers fans will still keep an eye on during their games to see how it goes. Browns at Saints. Saints are 1.5-point favorites at home. The Saints finally got off the schneid and got a win after they fired Dennis Allen. The Browns, they're just looking to bounce back and look respectable at all. Give me the Saints, though, Brian. I think they might have found a little bit of juice left, and I just don't believe in anything the Browns do this season. But at the same time, I don't believe in the Saints either. I just think they'll be less sucky in this game.
That's a good way to put it. They got that new interim coach bump from Darren Rizzi taking over for Dennis Allen. I don't know who's going to want that job next year when it's open, but hey, as they always say, there's only 32 of them, so someone will sign up for it. But yeah, I mean, Steelers fans should have a little bit of passing interest in this one just because they have the Browns next. And I'm going to actually disagree with you here, Chris. I think Jameis Winston revenge game at New Orleans. I don't actually know if he ended there on bad terms or anything, but they didn't re-sign him. The Browns did bring him in. I think he has a good game back in his old stadium, and I'm actually starting him in fantasy this week, so I hope I'm correct about that. I benched Jaden Daniels. Not maybe a wise move, but he didn't do much last night.
Yeah, I was going to say it turned out being wise because he did not do hot.
We'll see if it's wise based on how James plays. That could backfire if he throws 4 picks and gets benched. But give me the Browns on the red.
All right, there's your first pick there. We split Saints and Browns. Let's go to the next one involving 2 former Steelers opponents. The Jets are 3.5-point home favorites over the Colts. Colts don't seem to know who they want to be at quarterback. It's Joe Flacco. It's Anthony Richardson. It's Joe Flacco. It's Anthony Richardson. They're about to throw me in there at one point. Let's now we know they're going with Anthony Richardson this week. As much as the Jets have been bad and they've had their own things to worry about, I'll take New York at home to solve these problems while the Colts are figuring out who they even want to be their quarterback.
Yeah, I think Anthony Richardson can bounce back at some point this season, but to me, this is a little bit of a difficult spot to throw him into right away. Plus, they've had to have been a little bit distracted by this as a team this week. I think both of these franchises are a little bit dysfunctional right now, but I'll go with the Jets at home in this one. I don't feel great about it, but man, I think Aaron Rodgers will find a way to scratch out a few more points than Richardson getting back in the saddle.
The Seahawks are facing the 49ers in San Francisco. The 49ers are 6.5-point favorites in this game. The Niners are trying to bounce back from their rough start. They're 5-4, only a half game back of the Cardinals. They need this win to keep pace. The Seahawks 4-5, just a game back, but that's tied for last in the division right now. I look at the Niners, and with Christian McCaffrey back, I give them the edge in this game. I don't know about if I get 6.5 points because these are divisional opponents, and this should be close, but give me the Niners to win this game.
Yeah, Seahawks are reeling right now. They lost a couple in a row, but they're coming off, they were off last week, so they should be refreshed. They should have had a lot of time for their new coaching staff to study this game plan, figure out what went wrong in their first meeting with the Niners when they lost 36-24. I'm not going to pick them straight up, but I think they'll be frisky enough to cover. I'll still take the Niners to hold serve at home and win this one, although they also were a little bit, drama filled last week with Deebo Samuel yelling at the kicker and the long snapper. I don't think you'd ever see that in Pittsburgh with Christian Kuntz and Chris Boswell.
You do not.
You might see Chris Boswell yelling at Christian Kuntz, but I don't think you'd see one of the wide receivers or defensive guys taking it out on them.
Falcons at Broncos. Broncos are 1.5-point favorites at home. Two more former teams the Steelers have faced here. I don't know how to read either of these teams. The Broncos at times have impressed, and then they've also just fallen flat on their faces. The Falcons looked like they were a really good team. They were 6-3, and then they lost to the Saints last week. Granted, that's a divisional opponent and all, but I've liked both of these teams at different times of the year. The Falcons 6-4, the Broncos 5-5. I'm going with the Falcons, but I think I mainly because they're at home and I feel like they can bounce back. The Broncos, they've lost 2 straight. They need to bounce back. They played the Chiefs close last week, but got slaughtered by the Ravens 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, they actually bounced back pretty well from that Ravens blowout. The fact that they were right there against the Chiefs, like
a blocked field goal away from beating them.
Exactly. Does that lead to, guys being a little bit down in this game, or are they motivated to step back up and encouraged by what they nearly did against Kansas City? Is there a hangover from that, or are they invigorated by it a little? I'm going to go with the latter. I'll take the Broncos at home against Kirk Cousins and company. Their defense showed me week 2 against the Steelers that they're better than we thought they'd be going into the season. And result against Baltimore notwithstanding, they have been pretty feisty. So I'll say Bo Nix gets the job done against Kirk Cousins, and Sean Payton schemes up some things, and they find a way to win this one.
Well, Steelers Ravens is going to have everyone's attention in the 1 o'clock hour. Everyone's eyes will be on Chiefs Bills in the 4 o'clock hour. The Bills are 2.5-point favorites at home. The Chiefs have just continued to find ways to win in the craziest of fashions. When you look at their win last week, they blocked a short field goal that would have won the game for the Broncos in regulation. They beat the Buccaneers by 6. They beat the Raiders by 7. They beat the Chargers by 7. The Falcons by 5. The Bengals by 1. The Ravens by 7. They've won so many close affairs, and so a lot of people are thinking, okay, eventually one of these will go against them. I'm one of those people. I feel like the Bills have played good football lately. I think that they have the recipe to upset they wouldn't be upsetting the Chiefs because they're favored right now. But I think that they can win this game, especially because it's at home. It's not in Arrowhead. I think Buffalo comes in, gets a dub, goes in the bye week feeling good, and then and they're going to take advantage of their late slate to make a good push to the playoffs. What say you about this game, Brian?
I'm going to borrow a line from my good friend Joe Starkey and say, Chris, I agree with every syllable and half syllable you just uttered. I'm with you. I think the Bills do win. This seems like a regular season type of win for Buffalo over Kansas City. They've been flying too close to the sun. Bills will get it done in front of Bills Mafia. Tough place to play. That'll be a fun game. I'll go Josh Allen over Patrick Mahomes this week, at least, when all the chips are not down yet.
I agree, because I could totally see these teams meeting up again in the playoffs and the Chiefs just handling them.
I think the Steelers would love that. I think they would say, "Hey, you guys take care of each other."
And, one of you guys knock each other out.
Exactly.
The Steelers would happily play the Chargers or the Ravens or just someone not named Josh. Having to not go through Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes would be a welcome thing for the Steelers, which is why they got to finish strong this season. All right, let's go to this other big game, and this is a big game, Sunday Night Football. I feel like if you're the home watcher, this is a perfect week. You get Steelers, Ravens, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, Chargers, just prime quarterbacks in all 3 of those matchups in every
Especially
hour.
If you're an AFC fan, if you're in one of these cities.
100%. Bengals go into this game as 1.5-point dogs on the road. The Chargers 1.5-point favorites. Justin Herbert, I think, has started to come into his own a little bit more in John Harbaugh's offense, and that to me is a big part of why people have started to find favor in them. Joe Burrow, it's not that he's been bad. I mean, they've been putting up points. They've just lost some close ones, in particular 2 close ones to the Ravens. But I've said this before, Brian. you look at the teams that the Bengals have beaten, the Raiders, the Browns, the Giants, the Panthers, they do not have a good win yet. You know, I know this isn't the college football playoff committee. I know we're not Selection Sunday people, but I look against, they've lost to the Chiefs, the Commanders, the Ravens twice, and the Eagles. You know, they've lost to all the good teams that they could have played. They also lost to the Patriots. And I look at the Chargers like a good team right now. While the Bengals are 4-6, they're 6-3. They've won three straight, 4 of their last 5. And you could say, well, wait, who have they beaten? At least their best one is the Broncos. Give me the Chargers. I think their defense plays a solid game on the West Coast. I think that they limit Joe Burrow enough, and they're able to score enough points on this weak Bengals defense. Give me Los Angeles getting it done.
I think you could make a case that the 6 best offenses in the AFC all play each other this week, with the Texans, hurt up, as you like to say, at wide receiver. You might even be able to make a case that the 6 best teams, if the Bengals can figure this out, are in these 3 games. I'm going to take Cincinnati on the road at the Chargers. I don't feel great about it, but I mean, with LA sitting at 6-3 and the Bengals at just 4-6, I feel like over the balance of this season, water kind of has to find its level for both to some extent. So this is a spot where Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, high-flying offense goes on the road in the Dome at SoFi Stadium, and fast track outscores Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert and company.
Well, they certainly need it. They have a bye week after this, and then they play
Jamar Chase is rolling right now, so
yes,
Chargers might be able to tackle a little better than the Ravens, but I'll put my money on them.
And look, the Bengals need it. If they fall to 4-7 going into the bye, they would basically just need to win out to have any.
And I don't think that's. I can't see that happening. As bad as the defense has been, I just can't envision that happening to the Bengals. So love this uniform matchup too. The Bengals, the Bolts. This is just a lot of color, but I'm into that.
Absolutely. We get into Steelers-Ravens next. That's the big week. That's the big weekend game all Steelers fans want to hear about. We'll break down our thoughts on that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and bestest lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them now for a free consultation at Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can get your new Honda vehicle today at 5802 University Boulevard in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, or go to moonhonda.com. Here's a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
To build the Honda CR-V Hybrid, we took everything you love about the CR-V and kicked it up a notch with greater power for a CR-V unlike any before. Adventure confidently with Honda, Car and Driver's most awarded brand in 10 Best history. The CR-V and CR-V Hybrid, part of the Honda line of rugged vehicles. Visit your local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily. Buy online or reserve from select Honda dealers.
We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, the Steelers go into this game as 3-point dogs at home, and we talked about this earlier with the passing matchups here. You alluded, though, to some analysis on your part of how you think this game could play out and how where these two teams are going to intersect. What's your outlook as far as the big factor that maybe people might be overlooking about this game?
Well, I think the kicking game is a little bit overlooked to some extent. But, this Ravens pass defense, Mike Tomlin, I don't think he was necessarily just blowing smoke. I think the overall premise of his comments and praise toward them Tuesday was like, look, it's not like these players are bad. It's not like these are inexperienced guys who have no idea what they're doing or where they should be going. So you feel like there's going to be regression in terms of the amount of yards they're hemorrhaging every week. When you have Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Williams, who's not playing well, but is a veteran, and Kyle Hamilton, assuming he's healthy, which it looks like he is going to go in this game. Brandon Stevens is actually playing better than he ever has on the other side of Humphrey at cornerback. He's not taken for granted the way that Jamar Chase just cooked them last week. So I'm not convinced that it's just going to be a real feel me flow type of game by Russell Wilson and George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth and the new guy, Mike Williams. I think there's going to be more of a feistiness to this Ravens defense than we give them credit for, looking at the numbers and the stats and the recent results. So that, to me, is why it could Could be a little more of a knockdown, drag out fight than what we've seen from these two offenses scoring a bunch of points lately.
One thing I think the Ravens normally have that they haven't had this year is they normally have good interception numbers. When you look at their ability to intercept the football, last year you look at it, they were the number 3 intercepting team in the NFL with 18. This year they can't buy an interception. They do have 6 on the year, but they've dropped so many and they've been in position for several. I watched, and I mean, if they just caught the ones that Jameis Winston thrown to them, they'd be tied with the Steelers right now. And I think that's a big factor in this game is that the Ravens secondary and the way they play, they've gotten guys that they thought would be ball hawk, guys that would go after the football. We know about Marlon Humphrey's ability to punch the ball out, but they want guys to be able to attack the football and get those turnover plays, and they just haven't this year. And if they're not able to turn over Russell Wilson, I think it's going to give the Steelers a lot of second bites at the apple, and that's when the Steelers can be dangerous. Similarly, the Steelers have to be an intercepting team. Lamar Jackson, when he makes mistakes, make him pay for them. Don't let him get second chance opportunities with his legs. Don't let him get second chance opportunities with his offense, or give Derrick Henry short yardage situations to be able to win. And that's what it's going to come down to. And I think it could be turnovers that make the difference. We know a turnover made the difference when they last played Lamar Jackson. Joey Porter Jr. intercepted him in the end zone back before he was even a starter. So I think a big part of this comes down to which secondary can force more mistakes and capitalize on more mistakes in this game.
I think if Marlon Humphrey can take away George Pickens, assuming he travels with him, that really opens up a lot of the defensive game plan for the Ravens to send heat at Russell Wilson, try to pressure him, make it tough on him all day. And, we'll see if they can shut down the run with some of their big guys up front. And obviously Roquan Smith patrolling that second level. Keys to the game, Chris. Here we go. Steelers defense needs to say, sorry, Mr. Jackson, you aren't getting that big play today. No bombs over Baghdad runs from Derrick Henry. And they need to play so clean with the Ravens being so fresh coming off that Thursday night football and mini bye.
So let me guess, you feel like the Steelers will be some outcasts in this game?
Yeah, I mean, hey, yeah.
Terrible. If I had the Yoshi meme available on this show, you would be destroyed right now.
All right, let's give the picks. Let's give the predictions.
Sorry.
Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
No, you start, Mr. Pun Man.
Yeah, you actually probably need a minute to regroup after that. Collect your thoughts. Let your anger dissipate. But this is kind of a troll pick of the score because I don't actually know that it's going to be quite this low scoring. But both games last year were 17-10 wins for the Steelers. I'm going to say 17-10 again, but the Ravens win at Acrisure Stadium. Lamar or Derrick Henry, one of those two transcendent players, just rips off that one big run or that one magical, pass play by Lamar to evade pressure and find somebody in the end zone that stands up as the difference.
No, listen, I can totally see it. And part of me feels like, just timing wise, this just feels like a place where the Steelers could afford to lose a game. They've won 4 straight and 3 straight with Russell Wilson.
When is somebody going to win? Why would somebody win 5 straight in the Steelers-Ravens rivalry? That just doesn't even make any sense.
And that's another thing. Steelers have dominated the Ravens 7-1 in their last 8. I do feel part of that. But then I look at the matchups, Brian, and I just do not like what the Ravens have ahead of them. Their pass defense has been bad. The Steelers' pass offense has been good. They might be missing their best safety in this game, Kyle Hamilton. And I look at this opportunity and I see a chance for Russell Wilson. The Ravens are giving up the most receptions and the third most receiving yards in the NFL to tight ends this year. And Russell Wilson he talked about after last game about being a facilitator, not a guy who tries to make the big plays or put the team on his shoulder himself, but to get the ball to the best playmaker in the best situation.
He's playing like a point guard. To make a basketball to football analogy. I've got hoops on the brain. So we've got the basket brawl tonight at the Pitt, West Virginia. You'll be there. Yes. Stephen E. Thompson will be there.
So will Abby Schnabel. We'll have the whole
Abby
team
Schnabel
there.
Will be there. That's going to be awesome. But yeah, Justin Fields was kind of like, he was playing ISO ball at times and trying to keep this offense afloat when things weren't going well. Russ has settled into that point guard role of getting the rock to his best assets on offense, distributing, and hitting a three from downtown when he needs to.
And I think that's what Russell Wilson's going to have to do is hit the occasional deep ball, but find his tight ends. Roquan Smith has been bad in coverage this year. He's not been as nearly as dominant as he has been in years past, and I think that the Ravens are going to pay for that. I have the Steelers winning this game 26-20 in a close one. It does go down to the wire with the defense having to make one final stand to stay on the field, and the Steelers hold on to first place in the AFC North. But we will see how this game comes down to it. You can read all about it in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, and you can find us here. We'll have all our guys at Acrisure Stadium Sunday, 1 o'clock, and after the game, you can get our instant reactions here from both Paul Zeiss, Adam Bittner, as well as from our reporters who are on the scene at Acrisure Stadium. Get it all here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and on the North Shore Drive podcast. As always, you can find this show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of that daily content from our Pittsburgh Post-Gazette writers. We'll see you here game day, game night, that is, for Steelers Ravens right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.